Do you have hobbies?
I am not. Yeah, a lot of sex.
They thought they knew everything about him. The world saw the glitter, the chaos, the voice that could shake the sky. But when Freddie Mercury passed away in 1991, what he left behind wasn't just music or memories. It was a mystery sealed behind a green door in Kensington. For over 3 decades, his home, quiet, untouched, stood like a mausoleum of genius. Friends who had laughed with him, partied with him, and stood beside him on the world's biggest stages, even they were left stunned when the doors finally opened. What was inside wasn't just shocking. It was personal, it was powerful, and it was Freddie raw, vulnerable, and real. This is the story of what they found in Freddie Mercury's London home, and why it left even his closest friends speechless. The myth of Garden Lodge. Tucked behind a tall brick wall in Kensington, London, sat a house that few ever entered, and even fewer truly understood. Garden Lodge wasn't just Freddie Mercury's home. It was his escape, his sanctuary, a world completely separate from the chaos of fame. To the outside world, it was just a quiet Georgian-style house. But to those closest to him, it was sacred. A place where Freddie shed the spotlight and simply existed. No cameras, no interviews, just him, his music, and the people he trusted. In 1980, at the height of Queen's success, Freddie spent £500,000 to make Garden Lodge his own, not because it was the flashiest property, but because it felt safe, private, peaceful, a retreat built for someone who gave so much to the world, yet craved silence when the curtain dropped. Mary Austin, his former fiancée and lifelong confidante, walked through the door with him for the first time. She later said it felt like stepping into a dream, calm, creative, and full of light. To her and to Freddie, it was more than a house. It was home. The design reflected his contradictions. Saffron yellow walls lit the rooms with warmth. Japanese gardens bloomed just outside. His mirrored dressing room sparkled with flair. The double-height drawing room echoed with piano notes that would become rock anthems. After his death, Mary preserved it all. For decades, she didn't change a thing. As if Freddie might walk back in at any moment, sit at the piano, and start playing. And one day, that stillness would break. The doors would open, and what they'd find inside would leave even his closest friends speechless. But to understand what made that house so special, you first have to understand the boy who built it, and the life he left behind to become a legend. From Zanzibar to Kensington. Before he was Freddie Mercury, he was Farrokh Bulsara, a quiet, curious boy, born on September 5, 1946, in Zanzibar. His family, devout Zoroastrians of Indian origin, raised him with tradition and discipline, but even as a child, Farrokh stood out. He had 4 extra teeth, a strange quirk most would ignore. But he believed it gave him a wider vocal range. Whether true or not, it became part of the legend. Most of his early life played out in India. At just 7, he was already learning piano. A year later, he was sent to St. Peter's boarding school near Bombay, where everything changed. He started calling himself Freddie, joined a band called the Hectics, and shocked classmates with his ability to hear a song once and play it instantly on piano. But in 1964, revolution swept through Zanzibar. Violence forced his family to flee, leaving everything behind. They resettled in England, in a small house in Middlesex. Cold, gray, and unfamiliar, Freddie had gone from palm trees to row homes overnight. But he adapted fast. He studied art, earned a diploma in graphic design, and hustled to survive. He worked as a baggage handler at Heathrow Airport and sold clothes at Kensington Market. That's where he met Roger Taylor. Before the fame, before Queen, just 2 friends selling scarves, dreaming big. Even then, Freddie carried himself differently. He wasn't loud, but he was bold. Quiet in conversation, wild in creativity. He soaked up music, theater, fashion, anything that could feed the fire already building inside him. Those early failures with bands like Ibex and Sour Milk Sea didn't shake him. Every stumble was part of the plan. He wasn't just chasing fame. He was building something. And soon, the world would hear it. Becoming Mercury. By 1970, Freddie was done waiting. The shy art student with the sharp eye and sharper dreams had finally stepped into his own shadow, and he wasn't turning back. That year, he joined a band called Smile with drummer Roger Taylor and guitarist Brian May. It wasn't long before he pushed for a new identity. He wanted something bold, theatrical, unforgettable. He called it Queen. The name raised eyebrows. Some thought it was too provocative, too strange. But Freddie knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't just about the music, it was about spectacle, identity, power. Around that same time, he dropped his birth name and officially became Freddie Mercury. He wasn't hiding, he was evolving. Even before their debut album, Freddie designed the now famous Queen crest, an elaborate emblem made from each member's zodiac sign. Lions for Deacon and Taylor, a crab for May, two fairies for himself, the Virgo. At the center, a crown under a flaming phoenix. It wasn't just a logo, it was a declaration. Then came the sound. Freddie's voice was impossible to ignore. Though his speaking tone rested in a calm baritone, his singing soared into the tenor range, bright, powerful, and utterly unique. He didn't just sing notes, he launched them like fireworks. And his songwriting, unpredictable. He could write complex operatic epics like Bohemian Rhapsody, then switch to a simple rockabilly tune like Crazy Little Thing Called Love. He didn't read music, he didn't need to. Everything came from instinct. Each song felt like a different universe, and that was the point. Freddie hated repetition. He once said he thrived on change, and it showed. Every lyric, every harmony, every risk he took pushed Queen further into rock immortality. But Freddie didn't just lead the band, he created its heartbeat. With his voice, his vision, and his fearlessness, he transformed Queen from a rock group into royalty. Freddie Mercury wasn't just born, he was built by design, by courage, and by the kind of genius that only comes once in a lifetime. The voice, the showman. Freddie Mercury didn't just perform, he exploded onto the stage like he was born for it. From the moment he grabbed the mic, he owned the air. He didn't just hit notes, he attacked them, stretched them, bent them into something almost supernatural. Though his natural speaking voice was baritone, his singing defied limits. He could soar into tenor highs with perfect control, drop into growls, or glide through falsetto, all in the same breath. And he made it look effortless. But it wasn't just the voice, it was the presence. Freddie didn't walk on stage, he arrived, strutting, spinning, commanding every corner of the room. Whether it was a smoky club or a packed stadium, he made every person feel like he was singing only to them. Mic stand in hand, chest bare or draped in drama, he turned concerts into ceremonies. His performances were equal parts theater and thrill. Sequins, leather, royal capes. His costumes changed, but the power never faded. One night he was a rock god, the next, a cabaret king. Every movement choreographed, every expression calculated to captivate. Then came Live Aid. July 13, 1985. Wembley Stadium. 70,000 people in the crowd, millions more watching across the globe. Freddie stepped onto that stage in jeans and a white tank top and delivered a performance that would be etched into music history. He didn't have pyrotechnics. He didn't need them. In just 20 minutes, he led a crowd like a conductor leads an orchestra. His energy swallowed the stadium whole. His sustained AO became the rallying cry of an entire generation. It was raw, electric, and unforgettable. Critics called it the greatest live performance of all time. But for Freddie, it was just another night of doing what he did best, transforming sound into magic. He wasn't just singing songs, he was delivering emotion with a fire that couldn't be faked, and no matter how high the notes went, he never lost touch with the crowd. David Bowie once said Freddie didn't join the ranks of theatrical rock stars, he outshined them all. Brian May said he had a supernatural gift for connecting with the farthest person in the last row. Freddie's power wasn't just his voice or stage presence. It was the way he made people feel like they belonged in his world, even just for a moment. And once you stepped inside that world, nothing ever looked the same again. Wild nights and hidden truths. Freddie Mercury's life offstage was as unpredictable as his performances, wild, dazzling, but deeply layered. While fans saw the confident icon, behind the curtain lived a man full of contradictions, private yet flamboyant, guarded yet generous, constantly walking the line between myth and mystery. At his peak, his parties became legendary. The 1978 jazz album celebration in New Orleans wasn't a gathering, it was mayhem. Naked waiters, drag queens, fire breathers, and dwarves with trays of cocaine strapped to their heads. Rumors swirled of even more outrageous acts, and at the center of it all, Freddie laughing, watching, living like there was no tomorrow. It wasn't just decadence, it was defiance. Freddie had been raised under strict rules, religious tradition, and cultural restraint. So when he found fame, he didn't just enjoy it, he detonated it. He turned every night into a statement that he wouldn't be boxed in by anyone or anything. But behind the spectacle, there was tenderness. Freddie had relationships with both men and women. He fell hard, loved deeply, and often kept those he loved closest, while protecting their stories from the press. His bond with Mary Austin, his former fiancée, never broke. When he told her he was attracted to men, she responded not with anger, but with honesty. Their romance ended, but their connection never did. He once said, "All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible." He called her his common-law wife, left her his home, his fortune, and his ashes, and she kept his secrets long after he was gone. Then came Jim Hutton, the quiet Irish hairdresser who would become Freddie's final and truest love. Their relationship lasted 7 years, steady and devoted. They wore matching wedding bands, built a quiet life inside Garden Lodge, and when the world turned its back, Jim stood by Freddie until his last breath. Freddie's private world also included his greatest obsession, cats. He had a house full of them, each with a name, a personality, and a place in his heart. He'd call home from tours just to hear them meow over the phone. His favorite, Delilah, had a song written in her honor. His Kensington home was filled with cat portraits and accessories. For Freddie, they weren't pets, they were family. His passions extended to art, antiques, and Japanese design. Garden Lodge became a curated reflection of his soul, bold, beautiful, peaceful, and eccentric all at once. This side of Freddie, gentle, loyal, quiet, rarely made headlines because he kept it sacred. But not everyone respected that privacy, and one man's betrayal would leave a scar that never fully healed. The betrayal that cut deep. For someone as fiercely private as Freddie Mercury, loyalty wasn't just important, it was everything. He let very few people into his inner world, and once you were in, the expectation was clear: protect it. That's what made Paul Prenter's betrayal so personal and so devastating. Paul wasn't just a manager. He was part of Freddie's inner circle throughout the late 70s and early 80s. Some claimed their relationship was more than professional, though that was never publicly confirmed. Regardless, Prenter was close, maybe too close. At first, things ran smoothly. Paul helped coordinate tours, managed press, and filtered access to Freddie. But cracks soon appeared. When Queen released Hot Space in 1982, its funky disco-heavy sound marked a sharp shift from their rock roots. Brian May and Roger Taylor weren't happy, and many pointed fingers at Prenter for influencing Freddie's direction. Tensions grew. The band felt alienated. Paul's presence became a problem, but Freddie didn't cut ties. He remained loyal even as the atmosphere around them soured. Then, in 1987, it all collapsed. Paul Prenter sold a story to The Sun, revealing private details about Freddie's personal life, his relationships with men, including Jim Hutton, and even information about his health. It wasn't just gossip, it was a violation, a betrayal from someone who had once been trusted with everything. For a man like Freddie, who had guarded his truth so carefully, the damage was enormous. Friends were stunned, fans were shaken, and Freddie, he was done. He severed ties with Paul completely and never spoke to him again. Years later, Freddie's brother-in-law explained that Paul had been bitter and broke, struggling with his own health issues. He claimed Paul felt abandoned and sold the story out of desperation. But whatever the reason, the wound it left never fully healed. From that moment on, Freddie's circle grew smaller. He stopped letting new people in. He became more protective, more guarded, and he learned painfully that fame doesn't just attract fans, it attracts traitors too. Prenter's betrayal wasn't just a tabloid scandal, it was a turning point, one that changed how Freddie lived the rest of his life, and who he allowed to stand beside him when the lights finally dimmed. Final days behind the green door. As the years wore on, Freddie Mercury began to disappear from the spotlight. The man who once commanded stadiums now stayed hidden behind the tall walls of Garden Lodge. Rumors swirled about his health, his appearance, his future, but Freddie said nothing. Silence became his shield. Only a few people knew the truth. Mary Austin, Jim Hutton, Peter Freestone. This small circle stayed by his side as his health declined. Even his Queen bandmates weren't fully in the loop. They noticed the weight loss, the fatigue, the quiet withdrawal, but no one asked. It was understood, if Freddie wanted to talk, he would. Until then, they respected his silence. Still, he kept creating, kept recording. Even as his body weakened, his voice remained powerful. In the studio, he gave everything he had, often singing while sitting down, exhausted but refusing to stop. "I'll keep working until I damn well drop," he once said. And he meant it. His last public appearance came in 1990 at the Brit Awards. He stood on stage with Queen but said nothing, just a brief wave, a quiet nod. It was clear something was wrong, but Freddie kept the truth locked behind that green door. Then, on November 23, 1991, just one day before his death, Freddie released a statement to the world. From his bed at Garden Lodge, he finally confirmed what many had feared: he had AIDS. In the note, he said he had kept his condition private to protect those around him. But now he wanted the truth out, not for sympathy, but to raise awareness. It was bold, it was honest, it was Freddie, speaking only when he was ready. 24 hours later, he was gone. He died peacefully at home, surrounded by the people who mattered most. Jim held his hand. Mary was nearby. The world outside mourned, but inside Garden Lodge, it was quiet, private, just the way Freddie wanted. Even in his final days, he remained in control. He chose when to speak, how to say goodbye, and who would be there when the music finally stopped. And behind that green door, a legend took his final bow, not in front of thousands, but in the place he loved most: home. What they found inside the house. After Freddie Mercury's passing, Garden Lodge became something few expected: a time capsule. For over 3 decades, the house remained untouched. Behind its ivy-covered walls and iconic green door, everything stayed exactly as he left it. Mary Austin, the one person Freddie trusted above all, inherited the property. But she didn't rush to renovate or erase him. She preserved it. For years, she walked the halls alone, kept the curtains drawn, and maintained every detail as if Freddie might return at any moment. When people finally got a glimpse inside, they were stunned. The living room walls glowed with warm saffron yellow, his favorite color. His mirrored dressing room, where he once transformed into the performer the world adored, remained intact. Upstairs, the bedroom was frozen in time. Perfume bottles sat undisturbed. His glasses, slippers, and silk robes all still in place. Even his toothbrush remained in its holder. In the drawing room stood his piano, the one where he composed Bohemian Rhapsody. The sheet music, scrawled in Freddie's handwriting, still sat on the stand. His cat's beds, art books, and antique Japanese collectibles all whispered stories of who he was when the lights went out and the crowds went home. Then there was the garden, designed by Freddie himself. It was a peaceful escape from the noise of fame. Cherry blossoms, stone lanterns, koi ponds, it felt more like a spiritual retreat than a backyard. His music room overlooked it, and so did the bar, where he often entertained close friends, wrapped in a robe, sipping champagne, laughing in private. But the most emotional discovery wasn't inside. It was the green door itself. Over the years, fans from around the world traveled to Logan Place just to leave messages. Notes, poems, drawings, layer upon layer of tributes turned the door into a living memorial. It wasn't just a gate anymore, it was a wall of love. When Mary Austin decided to auction Freddie's belongings in 2023, it wasn't an easy decision, but she felt it was time. Over 1,500 items went up for sale at Sotheby's, with proceeds supporting AIDS charities. just as Freddie would have wanted. The crown and velvet robe he wore during Queen's final tour sold for staggering amounts. Handwritten lyrics, stage costumes, jewelry, artwork, all gone to fans and collectors who saw these pieces as more than memorabilia. They were pieces of Freddie's soul. Even the green door was auctioned. Covered in heartfelt graffiti, it sold for more than £400,000, almost the price Freddie had paid for the entire home back in 1980. Every item revealed something new, a note of vulnerability, a spark of joy, a glimpse into the mind of a man who lived with passion and died with dignity. Freddie Mercury may be gone, but inside Garden Lodge, he was never more alive. Auction, legacy, and Garden Lodge's next chapter. When Mary Austin decided to part with Freddie's belongings, it marked the end of an era and the beginning of something unexpected. The Sotheby's auction in 2023 wasn't just a sale, it was a worldwide event. Fans lined up for hours just to see the collection before it went under the hammer. Over 1,500 items were displayed, each one carrying the weight of history. His handwritten lyrics, his stage-worn costumes, his paintings, Polaroids, sunglasses, letters, and drawings. These weren't museum pieces, they were fragments of a man who lived unapologetically, loved fiercely, and left behind more than music. One of the most talked about items was the replica of St. Edward's crown and the velvet robe he wore during Queen's 1986 Magic Tour. It was theatrical, tongue-in-cheek, and utterly Freddie. He had slipped into that outfit not as a joke, but as a statement. He was rock's self-made royalty. The image of him, arms raised, crown glinting under the lights, remains burned into rock history. Fans also saw his raw side. The lyrics to We Are the Champions, scribbled and reworked, showed his perfectionism. A silver mustache comb, personal letters, even his cat-themed dishes. The layers of who Freddie was on stage and off, unfolded item by item. And then came the green door. The final, most symbolic piece. Covered in decades of fan messages, it sold for over £400,000, not because of its craftsmanship, but because it had become a shrine, a sacred relic, a portal into the heart of someone who meant so much to so many. The total auction raised millions, much of it donated to AIDS research and charities, a final gesture from a man who had spent his last breath encouraging others to fight back. But the story didn't end there. In 2024, Garden Lodge itself was put up for sale. For the first time in over 30 years, someone else would walk through that green door, not as a visitor, but as its new owner. The asking price, over £30 million, but even that didn't capture the true value of what the house held. Mary described it best. She said Garden Lodge was filled with love, laughter, and music, and she hoped the next person to live there would feel the same warmth she and Freddie had felt for all those years. This wasn't just the closing of a chapter. It was a reminder that Freddie Mercury didn't just leave behind a legacy in music. He left it in everything he touched. Every room, every note, every gesture, even the silence behind those walls said something. And now, even as Garden Lodge prepares for its next story, the one Freddie wrote inside it will never fade. The legend lives on. Freddie Mercury didn't just live, he ignited. He didn't just sing, he roared, whispered, and soared through songs that still echo through speakers and souls around the world. But what we often forget is that his greatest masterpiece wasn't just his music, it was how he lived. He built a life on his terms, loud, fearless, and full of contradictions. One moment, he was commanding a stadium of 100,000 people. The next, he was curled up with his cats in a silk robe, sipping champagne, laughing with friends in the quiet of Garden Lodge. That house wasn't just where he died. It was where he dreamed, where he wrote, where he loved. And for over 3 decades, it held on to his spirit like it was waiting for the world to finally see him, not just the performer, but the man. When the doors finally opened, we didn't just find velvet capes and gold crowns. We found heartbreak, joy, memories frozen in time. The final chapter of a life that was far bigger than any stage. And yet somehow, it still wasn't the end. Because Freddie's magic didn't stay trapped behind that green door. It lives on in every song, every tribute, every person who still feels something when they hear his voice. So if his story moved you, if his voice still gives you chills, and if what they found behind that green door left you speechless too, then hit that like button. Subscribe for more untold stories and hidden legends. Share this video with someone who still believes in the magic of Queen. And before you go, click on the next video now showing on your screen. It dives even deeper into the world behind rock's most unforgettable icons. You won't want to miss it.